Nothing ever seems to happen on the edge. I sit here by myself and dream of a moment of victory. One day someone will find me on this edge. And then we'll be best friends forever, because I've never met anyone. Hey buddy, you look real interested in crossing this disproportionately small divide. But it's still a gap, and hey, you might find that you might need a friend. I'm looking for friends, buddy. I swear I've never met anyone like you. Well, I've never met anyone but my mother, who abandoned me by this edge. It's okay, I'll be here to carry you. Come on, just grab my legs and we'll cross together. We'll cross the gap, come on. Hey buddy, click the button. And now we're soaring. My God, I can't believe that we're finally crossing the gap. I finally come to my final purpose. And then we're landing on the other side from my edge. I gotta say that gap was actually small. I can't believe it took me so long to cross it. Aren't you glad we found each other? Now we're sitting, possibly smiling. You know, it's kind of hard to tell when the pixels make it kind of hard to interpret, and all I can tell is you're leaving. Where you going, buddy? Don't you want to stay and be my friend? Maybe we can get some nice cream. I heard it's really tasty. Buddy? Oh.
Your song is kind of a joke.
Now I'm alone on the other side of my edge. I guess I'll wait for him or her to come back and need me again. I hope they will, 'cause they're the only person I've ever met. I'm sure we bonded. One day they'll come back and need help to cross the gap. Well, I hope they do, 'cause I kinda miss my spot on the other side. Oh, well.
Coming up to 15 minutes left on this stream. We'll be starting up with Doug Perry Drum Ultima next. If you join the Materia Collective Twitch again, then hopefully, barring any technical difficulties, we'll be able to follow everybody's stream. But thank you all for joining me. Boring old me. It is appreciated very much. The song is called Double Chill by Leslie and Snipes. I would agree, Smacky. The bird is a little bit too attached. It's unhealthy, this fixation. I have no idea why they're sitting in a puddle either. Another medium/core by David Peacock. This is possibly one of my favourite tracks on this disc. And maybe the album, we'll see. It's so beautiful. It's so perfectly arranged. I mean, in terms of my preference and style, I just love chamber orchestra stuff. Some great tracks all over this album. Everything's to such a high standard, and that's thanks to Doug and Sebastian and everyone involved. You're welcome, Smackian. You're welcome, Frederick, or Sakamoto fanboy. As much as I love hosting, I'm really looking forward to sitting back and just enjoying all of the other streams. Don't forget, Doug Perry Drum Ultimate is next. Hey Doug, how's it going? Photoshop just crashed on me. Please tell me it's saved. I don't think I saved recently. No! I lost all of that. I'll take a screenshot from the Twitch. Okay, I know what I'll do. I will do the story time at the end. I am so sorry Photoshop decided to crash in the middle of the work. I wasn't attached to it anyway, so it's not a big deal. Now you get to see my face. Oh well, I'll do a screen cap of that. Seeing as we're nearly finished, I'll finish on story time with Asgore. Turn down the volume on this.
And now it's time for our final segment of the stream. Story Time with Asgore Part 2. I hope you've enjoyed our lovely stream. To continue. Mrs. Perk was a good cook, and she kept a well-stocked larder of leftovers from the castle kitchen. I also have a castle. So, the mice never went to bed without supper. One way or another, they lived a happy and carefree life. During the summer evenings, they played games on the castle lawn. And in the winter, when it was cold outside, they sat in the lounge and watched television by moonlight. It was a very tiny screen, and the picture never changed, but it helped pass the time. Then one day something happened that threatened to change everything. The family woke to a strange smell. "It's paint," said Mr. Perk. He knew about these things. They must be decorating the castle. And sure enough, when they looked outside, there were ladders everywhere. But there was worse to come. As the days passed and the castle grew more and more inviting, the doll's house began to look so down at heel, no one bothered to take pictures of it anymore. It was even suggested that they should do away with it altogether. "But they can't do that, Dad," said Mrs. Perk. Oops, that was the wrong voice. "Can they? Believe me, Ma." "Believe me, Ma," said Mr. Perk gloomily. "There's so much word as can't. There's no such word as can't, damn it! I'm getting it wrong. Let's keep this PG. That evening, Mr. and Mrs. Perk went for a walk. While they were out, one of the children had an idea.
"We must do it ourselves,"
she said.
"Get scrubbing, everyone."
They found some washing up liquid, and in no time at all, there were bubbles everywhere. In fact, there were so many bubbles, they soon lost sight of each other. To make matters worse, the paper came away from the walls, and soon there were great piles of it everywhere. As it dried out, the glue set hard, trapping some of the smaller Perks, who began to cry. The sound of their sobbing brought Mr. and Mrs. Perk running, and when they saw the state of the house was in, they could hardly believe their eyes. "What are you going to do, Ma?" said Mr. Perk. "If you ask me, it's the right old mess. It's a right old mess." "They meant well, Dad," said Mrs. Perk, "so we can't really be cross, but oh dear, I don't know what the Earl would say when he sees it." She didn't have long to wait. The very next morning, the Earl took one look at the doll's house and ordered it to be removed. "Goodness me!" cried Mrs. Perk. "I never thought I would live to see our home being taken away on a lorry." "We shall have to look for other accommodation," said Mr. Perk. "I'd sooner have somewhere to live," said Mrs. Perk. But with winter coming on, it wasn't easy to find anywhere. But in the end, they had to make do with a garden shed belonging to the castle. "Did I tell you I enjoy potting around in my garden shed? Oh, such a peaceful time." Christmas was a very sorry affair. Food was scarce and nobody had any presents, and they had to pile on top of each other to keep warm. Then one day in early spring, when they were beginning to think they would never ever be happy again, the mice heard the sound of cheering and clapping coming from the castle. "Hush, everyone," called Mrs. Perk. "By popular request," said the Earl as the first visitors arrived, "the doll's house has been restored by some of the best craftsmen in the country. I wouldn't mind living there myself instead of this great castle," he added amid laughter as everyone rushed to take pictures. That night the Perks moved back into their old home and held a grand opening party of their own. Mrs. Perk made a cake. Like Toriel, I love the butterscotch pies. And there were 7 different kinds of cheese. "Just think, Dad," she said when it was all over and the children had gone to bed. "They may well be small, but if they hadn't made such a mess of trying to help, this never would have happened." "Good things often come in small parcels, Ma," said Mr. Perk. "If you ask me, the Earl needs us as much as we need him. I think it's high time we went to bed too." Soon, there wasn't a single snore to be heard. The Perks were all quiet, as only a happy mouse could be. I have been Asgore Fluffy Buns Dreamer, and this has been story time. I hope you enjoyed the stream. We're finishing up in the next few minutes. I'll keep an eye and wait for Ashley to tell me that Doug is ready to go.
Don't worry, Doug. You'll be able to see all story time on the archive. So, that is me pretty much done. Thank you, Smakian. I kind of winged it there with the storytelling at the end. I'll need to drop these books back to the library I work in at some point. Don't worry, I snuck in there when no one was in there, so it didn't look like some weird adult borrowing children's books. Materia Collective, would you like me to push everyone to the Materia Collective stream or to Doug's? By the way, the idea to do story time came to me at about 1 a.m. last night. I thought, the image is of Papyrus doing a junior jumble or maybe reading a storybook, so why not do some story time with Papyrus? And then I was like, the Asgore thing was just so fun. I pretty much do an impression of Brian Blessed mixed with Patrick Stewart. And I also noticed that I wave my hands around a lot. I just noticed that by looking at my stream. I don't know if because I was, this track is called Ua So Mettaton.
Ooh-wah!
So Mettaton, by Jeremy Harris Jones. So many Undertale J-Rock. Hold on a second, Ashley. I'll just check my messages. I'm not logged into Facebook. Cool. I'll